Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Wednesday, June 1st, 2022. President Joe Biden sending Ukraine U.S. rocket systems with a range of about 50 miles as part of the latest $700 million military aid package as Ukraine continues its war against the invading forces from Russia. But the U.S. says Ukraine is promising not to use those weapons to strike into Russian territory. Kremlin spokesman warning the United States is purposefully and diligently adding fuel to the fire. We'll hear from the Pentagon, Secretary of State, Ukraine's ambassador to the UN, and former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine about how this will affect the war. President Biden authorizing more shipments of infant formula to be brought in from overseas, easing U.S. shortages, latest in the Pentagon program known as Operation Fly Formula. Fallout from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's admission that she was wrong last year when she predicted high inflation would not be still around. We'll hear from the White House and a Republican congressman. And first ever female military service chief. Admiral Linda Fagan becomes the U.S. Coast Guard Commandant, a ceremony attended by the Commander-in-Chief, President Joe Biden. From the Associated Press, the U.S. and Germany pledged to send Ukraine some of the most advanced weapons yet for shooting down aircraft and knocking out artillery as Russian forces waged a grinding offensive in the east and closed in on capturing a key city. Germany said Wednesday it will supply Ukraine with modern anti-aircraft missiles and radar systems, and the U.S. unveiled a new weapons package that includes high-tech, medium-range rocket systems. The U.S. is trying to strike a balance, writes AP, by helping Ukraine battle ferocious Russian artillery barrages while not providing weapons that could allow Ukraine to hit targets deep inside Russia and trigger an escalation of the war. The U.S. Undersecretary of Defense, Colin Kahl, briefing reporters at the Pentagon.
Today, President Biden directed the drawdown of an additional $700 million in weapons and equipment from the Department of Defense inventories. The capabilities in this package are tailored to meet critical Ukrainian needs for today's fight, including requirements for rocket artillery. This authorization is the 11th drawdown of equipment from DoD inventories for Ukraine since August of 2021. The capabilities in this package include high-mobility artillery rocket systems, or HIMARS, and guided munitions with a range of up to 70 kilometers, 5 counter-artillery radars, 2 air surveillance radars, 1,000 additional Javelins and 50 command launch units, 6,000 anti-armor weapons, 15,000 155mm artillery rounds, 4 Mi-17 helicopters, 15 tactical vehicles, and spare parts and equipment. These are critical capabilities to help the Ukrainians repel the Russian offensive in the east. One such need is the high-mobility artillery rocket system I just mentioned, which responds to Ukraine's top priority ask. This system will provide Ukraine with additional precision in targeting at range. The Ukrainians have given us assurances that they will use this system for defensive purposes only. In anticipation of this potential decision by President Biden, the Department of Defense pre-positioned the HIMARS systems in Europe to ensure that they could be rapidly delivered to the Ukrainians, and put in place a plan so that we could start training Ukrainian forces immediately while ensuring they learn how to operate the system safely and effectively, as well as to maintain the system. We will continue to closely consult with Ukraine and surge additional available systems and capabilities in support of its defense.
Defense Undersecretary for Policy Colin Kahl in the Pentagon briefing room. More from the Associated Press article. In a guest essay published Tuesday evening in the New York Times, President Joe Biden confirmed that he's decided to provide the Ukrainians with more advanced rocket systems and munitions that will enable them to more precisely strike key targets on the battlefield in Ukraine. Biden had said Monday the U.S. would not send Ukraine rocket systems that can strike into Russia. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov telling reporters Wednesday that the U.S. is deliberately and diligently pouring fuel on the fire. He added that the Kremlin doesn't trust Kyiv's assurances that the multiple rocket launch systems supplied by the U.S. will not be used to attack Russia. In order to trust someone, you need to have experience with situations when such promises were kept. Regretfully, there is no such experience whatsoever. That quote from Dmitry Peskov in the AP article. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken answering a reporter's question about Russia's concerns. Blinken holding a joint news conference at the State Department in Washington, D.C., with the visiting NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg.
With regard to the long-range weapons, what can be done or is being done to minimize escalation with Russia? And do you believe that there's an understanding in Moscow about the nuance that the U.S. is trying to achieve with regard to the weapons that it does choose to send to Ukraine.
Let's start with this. It's Russia that is attacking Ukraine, not the other way around. And simply put, the best way to avoid escalation is for Russia to stop the aggression and the war that it started. It's fully within its power to do so. Specifically with regard to weapon systems being provided, the Ukrainians have given us assurances that they will not use these systems against targets on Russian territory. There is a strong trust bond between Ukraine and the United States, as well as with our allies and partners. I'd also say that throughout this aggression, indeed even before, President Biden was very clear with President Putin about what the United States would do if Russia proceeded with its aggression, including continuing to provide security assistance that Ukraine needs to defend itself against the Russian aggression. There was no hiding the ball. We've been extremely clear about this from day one, with President Biden communicating that directly to President Putin. So we have done exactly what we said we would do. And it is Russia, again, that chose to launch this aggression despite all of our efforts to prevent that with intense diplomacy over many months. Again, they started the conflict. They can end it at any time. And we will avoid any concerns about miscalculations or escalation.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken at a news conference at the State Department in Washington. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in an interview with Newsmax, says his country is not interested in attacking Russian territory and will use the new rockets to beat back Russian forces from Ukrainian lands. Ukraine's ambassador to the United Nations, Sergei Kislyak, asked today about the rockets in a virtual interview with Washington Post national security reporter Missy Ryan.
What significance do you see in this provision of the HIMARS system, a new system to Ukraine, and what do you think it says about the evolving Western response to the conflict?
Well, I think that has a very fundamental impact and importance because what we currently observe, and as my very good colleague, our ambassador to Washington, D.C. said yesterday in one of your public statements, we currently see an artillery duel in the East Front, and basically none of the sides can achieve a victory, and the offensive of the Russians is stalled, although there are some very limited advances that have no military importance, however. But both sides are stalled, and what happens, basically, the Russians kill Ukrainians at a rate, as my president said yesterday, of 60 to 100 soldiers per day. Add to that hundreds of wounded, while we do our best to stop the offensive. And if we do not receive in the most near future necessary weaponry, weapons and arms and munitions, I mean, that may last for quite a long time, and it wouldn't really be helpful to any of us, including the third parties concerned, including the US administration and our European allies.
Ukrainian ambassador to the United Nations, Sergei Kislyak, at today's virtual program with Missy Ryan, a Washington Post reporter. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres saying that he's hopeful that the global food crisis resulting from the war in Ukraine may ease the resumption of shipments of grain and plant oils from Ukraine and grain and fertilizer from Russia, but he says not right now. He tells a news conference in Sweden, I think there is progress in the talks, but we're not there yet. There are complex things, and the fact that everything is interlinked makes the negotiation particularly complex. Russia has effectively blockaded all of Ukrainian Black Sea ports during the war, not allowing exports. Another view about those long-range rocket systems the U.S. is sending to Ukraine, former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, saying it could make a difference in the war.
I think this is a big deal. The war in Ukraine as George indicated, unprovoked, unjustified by the Russians invading their neighbor for no reason that they can even identify, has gone on now into its 4th month, and it shifted location and it shifted tactics such that these longer range weapons are more important now than they were in the beginning. In the beginning, the Russians came down, as we know, from the north. They thought they would be able to take Kyiv and replace President Zelensky and take over the country by putting a puppet government in that they could control. That, of course, failed spectacularly. But the fighting around Kyiv, to the north of Kyiv, in the forests, short range, the weapons that NATO provided, that the United States provided, suited to that kind of terrain. It's now shifted. Second phase is, or current phase, is wide open territory. Those of us who have seen that part of Ukraine, indeed that part of the world, can picture Kansas. You can't sneak up like you could when you were in the forest. Long-range weapons are important. The so-called multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, have been on the Ukrainians' mind for months now. They knew what was coming. They knew what the change in terrain and tactics were going to mean for them. And sure enough, the Ukrainians are getting bombarded by the long range. They're losing the war right now? Not losing the war, because they've won the first phase around Kyiv. Right. They've even pushed the Russians back out of the second largest city, Kharkiv, in the northeast. The Russians have made progress, as we know, in the south. They've been stopped short of a major port, Odessa. Ukraine still owns that port. If the Russian fleet would allow ships to go back and forth in and out of that port, that we wouldn't have this food crisis that we have around the world. But different story. But the Russians have been stopped there, so the Ukrainians are not losing this war. The battle now is exactly what you say. It's kind of in this center. It's called around this area, Donbass, that the Russians invaded in 2014. And they're still trying to take a little bit more of Donbass, and they're making some progress because of these long-range fires. It's not just artillery, it's also ballistic missiles, it's cruise missiles, it's aircraft, it's airstrikes, which the Russians weren't using very well in the beginning. But they are now, and they're taking some territory. There's no doubt about it. So the Ukrainians are gradually pulling back, and they're resisting in the south. They've won the battle in the north. So it's kind of edging toward an uncomfortable stalemate, back and forth.
Does Ukraine have what they need to win this, or they only have enough to be in a stalemate?
They have enough to be in a stalemate. We will know the answer to that question if they win. When they win, they're convinced that they will win.
William Taylor was acting U.S. ambassador to Ukraine in 2019 and 20 during the Donald Trump administration. He is a career diplomat and was U.S. ambassador to Ukraine as well from 2006 through 9, starting under former President George W. Bush and into former President Barack Obama. He's now with the U.S. Institute of Peace and it's Russia and Europe vice president. The Institute hosting today's discussion. The moderator, you heard a bit of him, Chuck Todd, NBC News political director and Meet the Press host. We've got the full discussion on our website, archived at cspan.org. NATO member states will be holding a summit in Spain at the end of June. Before that, the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says he wants to sit down with representatives of Finland and Sweden, the two countries which have applied for NATO membership, and Turkey, a current NATO member, which has concerns about those two applicants joining. A question to the NATO Secretary as he was at the U.S. State Department in Washington today.
You mentioned that you're going to convene leaders of Finland, Sweden, and Turkey in the coming days. So I'm wondering if you are expecting Sweden and Finland to come to the table with precise actions they are willing to take that could assuage Turkey's concerns. And I'm also wondering if you're confident that Turkey's concerns about their membership will be addressed this month before the G7 summit. Thank you.
I and my staff, we are in close contact, of course, with Turkey, an important NATO ally, and the two countries that have applied for NATO membership, Finland and Sweden. We have met with them, and I'm going to convene a meeting in a few days with senior officials, and then follow up to ensure that we make progress on the applications of Finland and Sweden to join NATO. My intention is to have this in place before the NATO summit. At the same time, I know that to make progress, we need 30 allies to agree. Finland and Sweden have made it clear that they are ready to sit down and to address the concerns expressed by Turkey. And all NATO allies are, of course, ready to sit down and address those concerns, including the threats posed to Turkey by PKK. And this is terrorist threats, which, of course, is something we are taking very seriously. We know that no other NATO ally have suffered more terrorist attacks than Turkey, and that Turkey is an important ally, not least because of its strategic geographic location bordering Iraq and Syria. They have been important in our fight against ISIS, and also a Black Sea country close to Russia. So all of this makes Turkey an important ally. When they raise concerns, of course, we sit down and we look into how we can find a united way forward.
The NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg at the U.S. State Department in Washington, a joint news conference today with Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Any one of NATO's current 30 member states can veto a new entrant, and Reuters writes, as was alluded to by the NATO Secretary General, Turkey accuses Sweden and Finland of being safe havens for Kurdish militants and wants them to scrap arms export bans. Sweden and Finland had banned arms exports to Turkey after its Syria incursion against the Syrian Kurdish YPG militia. This from CNN. Vice President Kamala Harris on Wednesday unveiled a White House plan to advance global water security and emphasized the national security implications of water scarcity. Harris said the plan, which elevates water security as an international priority, is aimed at preventing conflict between nations and promoting equity and economic growth. Article goes on, the vice president noted in many parts of the world, the burden of collecting clean water disproportionately falls on women and girls. Around the world, women and girls spend 200 million hours per day collecting water, Harris said. He argued that time could be instead spent at school, at work, or with loved ones. Here's part of the vice president's remarks.
Many of our most fundamental national security interests depend on water security. And that is why today we are releasing our action plan on global water security. This action plan will cement America's role of leadership on water security issues. And it will do so first by fully committing our nation to the collective fight to provide access to safe water, hygiene, and sanitation services in every community in every country. Second, by sharing our world-leading water data, which we are collecting on the ground, literally, and through satellite technology. Collecting that data and sharing it, and the technical expertise that comes with that, with the international community to help manage and preserve global water resources. And third, by using our nation's considerable diplomatic resources. The great leader of USAID, we have so many leaders, to elevate water security as an international priority. This action plan will help our country prevent conflict and advance cooperation among nations, increase equity and economic growth, and make our world more inclusive and resilient. The past 2.5 years during the pandemic have demonstrated that our world is more interconnected and interdependent than ever before. Water scarcity is a global problem, and it must be met with a global solution. So today, we make clear the United States will be a leader.
Vice President Kamala Harris in the Indian Treaty Room in the Eisenhower Executive Office building next to the White House. She was joined by, as she mentioned, the USAID Administrator Samantha Power, also there, Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks, and the leaders of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Vice President Harris also noting that the United States has water issues of its own, scarcity issues, about 3/4 of the western part of the country facing severe drought now. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Live Thursday on C-SPAN Radio at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, the House Judiciary Committee considers gun control legislation, including raising the age to buy some semi-automatic rifles to 21 years old, banning high-capacity magazines, and making gun trafficking and straw purchases federal crimes. It is the first response by Congress to recent mass shootings, including the one at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, that killed 19 children and 2 teachers. Live Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on C-SPAN Radio. Tell your smart speaker to play C-SPAN Radio.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile video app and wherever you get your podcasts. A few more headlines. Uvalde, Texas School District Police Chief Pete Arredondo telling CNN he is in contact with state authorities investigating the police response to that recent school shooting massacre, and he's in contact on a daily basis, he says. And that contradicts a statement from the Texas Department of Public Safety that told CBS that Arredondo provided an initial interview but has not responded to requests since. Questions are being raised about why the chief ordered officers to remain outside the classroom when that gunman was inside, apparently shooting and killing students and teachers, 19 students and 2 teachers dying. A judge granting John Hinckley Jr., the man who shot and almost killed President Ronald Reagan in 1981, unconditional release from court-ordered psychiatric supervision begins June 15th. This comes after federal prosecutors, mental health professionals, and Hinckley's legal team told the judge today that they have no concerns about his mental state. Hinckley was found not guilty by reason of insanity in 1982, remained hospitalized until 2006, and was allowed to live with his mother starting in 2016. President Biden today announcing new overseas flights of shipments of baby formula. New York Times reports that it came as he prepared to meet with top officials from 5 baby food companies amid an ongoing shortage that has left parents desperately searching for ways to feed their infants. The article goes on, 2 weeks ago, the president responded to severe shortages of baby formula by invoking the Defense Production Act and promising to use the military to speed delivery of baby formula from overseas.
We launched Operation Fly Formula, the major effort to airlift infant formula that meets Americans' health standards and safety standards. Today, I'm proud to say that because of these flights, high-quality formula is already on the way to American shelves. We've already conducted 2 flights with 1.5 million 8-ounce bottles of Nestle and Gerber's hypoallergenic formulas for children with severe allergies. Without Operation Fly Formula, we've taken 3 weeks to get this product to the United States. Because of our action, it took 3 days. And it's heeded the request that people had, and it's headed to American shelves. And I want to thank the Department of Agriculture for helping fund and support Operation Fly Formula. And today, I'm announcing plans for a 3rd flight with Bubs Australia. And the CEO of Bubs, Christy Carr, is with us today, virtually today. This flight would bring 4.6 million bottles of infant formula and pave the way for up to 27.5 million total bottles of Bubs infant formula to be supplied to American families in the weeks ahead.
President Joe Biden in the Eisenhower Executive Office building, part of his opening statement before a virtual meeting with those leaders of the major infant formula manufacturers. President Biden making the point again today that the shutdown of that Abbott plant in Michigan a few months ago for health reasons was a major cause of the current infant formula shortage, and the FDA is working to get that plant up and running again. At the end of today's meeting, a reporter asked why something was not done sooner.
The question is, whether or not there was this could have been moved quicker. You know, the question you always on every single thing, why didn't you act sooner? Well, I don't think anyone anticipated the impact of the shutdown of one facility in the Abbott facility. And it was accurately shut down because the formula was questioned in terms of its purity. And so once we learned of the extent of it and how broad it was, we kicked everything into gear. And I think we're on the way to be able to completely solve the problem. But
They knew it immediately. Didn't the CEOs just tell you that they understood it would have a very big impact?
They did, but I didn't.
Should the FDA have been more aware of that when they took months to conduct the inspection, to interview people at this plant after the complaints were made, and then only shuttered it in February?
Well, the real problem occurred when it got shuttered. So you're saying they should have anticipated it would be shuttered. The answer is, well, here's the deal. I became aware of this problem sometime after April, in early April, about how intense it was. And so we did everything in our power from that point on, and that's all I can tell you right now. And we're going to continue to do it till we get the job done.
President Joe Biden taking some reporters' questions at the end of his hour-long discussion with the leaders of those 5 baby formula manufacturers. He was in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. They were joining remotely. Reaction today to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's comments from Tuesday night. She was on CNN. She said that her predictions about inflation last year were wrong. Consumer prices started to climb in 2021, are now at levels not seen in 4 decades. This is what Secretary Yellen told CNN's Wolf Blitzer Tuesday evening. It followed that high-profile meeting that she attended in the White House Oval Office on anti-inflation strategy with President Biden and the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell.
Was it a mistake, Madam Secretary, to downplay this inflation risk? Did that contribute to the problems we're all seeing right now?
Well, look, I think I was wrong then about the path that inflation would take. As I mentioned, there have been unanticipated and large shocks to the economy that have boosted energy and food prices and supply bottlenecks that have affected our economy badly that I at the time didn't fully understand.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on CNN Tuesday night. Today, Congressman David Kustoff, Republican from Tennessee, told this to Fox Business host Maria Bartiromo.
I'm really disappointed in Janet Yellen because she is much smarter than that, and she came with other administration officials to advocate for this stimulus, the $1.9 trillion bill in March, for the transportation, the infrastructure bill in November. And she knew the inflationary pressures that would result. Lawrence Summers told her. I asked her about that in the committee. And it's almost like she's become a political hack.
Well,
and I'm sorry to say
was
that.
this all politics? I mean, she was the chairman of the Federal Reserve. I mean, she knows the economy. She knows inflation. Was it just politics? She got into the White House and thought she needed to go with this narrative?
She's very smart. She's educated, as you said, been chairman of the Federal Reserve. She knew the challenges, and she let the administration hacks, those political people in the White House, push her to say those things and to advocate. But in the end, and I'll remind you, on the stimulus back in March of last year, there was not one Republican in the House, not one Republican in the United States Senate, not a Romney, not a nobody that voted for it. But she did convince those moderate Democrats to vote for it, and as a result, we're experiencing the highest inflation that we've seen in 40 years.
It's the description of inflation. Too many dollars chasing too few goods.
Congressman David Kustoff, Republican from Tennessee, with Maria Bartiromo of Fox Business Channel earlier today. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre getting follow-up questions at her daily news conference about the comments from the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen from Tuesday night on inflation, where Yellen said that she was wrong last year to predict it would be going away.
When are you guys going to admit that you were wrong about inflation?
No easy questions today, huh?
The Treasury Secretary says that she was wrong, so why doesn't anybody here at the White House?
Okay, so look, what the Secretary was pointing out, this is talking about yesterday when she was doing her hit, her TV hit with CNN, is that there have been shocks to the economy that have exacerbated inflationary pressures, which couldn't have been foreseen 18 months ago, including, well, I'm trying to answer your question. Hold on. I was just getting to the why not, including Russia's decision to invade Ukraine, multiple successive variants of COVID, and lockdowns in China. As she also noted during that interview, there has been historic growth and record job creation, and our goal is now to transition to steady and stable growth as inflation is brought down, as Brian Deese said yesterday to all of you when he was standing behind this podium. So the President's economic plan, as we see it, is working. Just today, we learned that the manufacturing was up in May, building on the 545,000 manufacturing jobs have been created since he took office. Further proof that companies are investing in America. We are on a path to stable growth, and we are addressing supply chain problems. Our plan to tackle inflation, lower costs, reduces the deficit, and respects the FDA's independence. It's the best way for us to achieve sustainable and durable economic growth. So that's how we're doing, the work that we're doing every day to make sure that we attack lower costs, higher costs.
Just that I understand, the Treasury Secretary says that she was wrong, but the White House was not wrong about inflation.
Here's the thing: we have achieved a. First of all, I explained to you what she was trying to say, so I just laid that out. So those are your words, not my words. I just laid out what she was trying to say and tried to explain in fullness her part in her answer. We have achieved an historic recovery through an extraordinarily unprecedented economic moment. The President has consistently noted that the primary drivers of inflation are the pandemic and Putin's invasion of Ukraine. The twists and turns of both these monumental events have affected energy prices and also food prices that we have seen these past several months. This is Putin's price hike, which the President refers to, and that is what Secretary Yellen was referring to if you read the entire transcript, and that's what I'm trying to say to you. Hopefully that lands.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre in the White House briefing room with reporters. Wall Street today, the Dow down 176, NASDAQ down 86, S&P down 30. Bureau of Labor Statistics saying job openings in the U.S. remain at a near record high, 11.4 million. And in April, about 4.4 million Americans quit their jobs. The number of jobs created and the unemployment rate for the month of May, that's going to be released this Friday. Food, along with fuel, two of the daily necessities that have seen large price increases lately. This from agweb.com, transforming the U.S. food system by improving supply chains and addressing issues exposed by the COVID-19 pandemic will be detailed today by the USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack during a speech at Georgetown University. The over $2 billion package includes previously announced funding to expand meat and poultry processing and to finance new infrastructure, such as cold storage facilities. But there are $600 million in new aid to support food supply chain infrastructure outside meat processing. The plan also includes $400 million for regional food business centers, up to $300 million for a new organic transition initiative, and $75 million to support urban agriculture. The initiative is funded through the American Rescue Plan that was enacted March 2021 and other relief legislation. That from AgWeb. Here's part of the speech about this food system transformation given by the Ag Secretary, Tom Vilsack.
I believe a transformed food system will make it easier to adapt to and mitigate from the severe consequences of a changing climate whilst not sacrificing agricultural production by reducing the carbon footprint of food production. I believe a transformed food system will deliver a better deal for farmers, ranchers, and growers and consumers through more new and better markets, also stimulating our rural economy. I believe a transformed food system will also lead to better health outcomes for Americans by increasing access to healthy, locally grown foods, lowering healthcare costs for all. I believe a transformed food system will sustainably produce more food, allowing the United States to meet its global responsibility through exports and donations to ensure global food security. The transformation that needs to take place has to be comprehensive and has to touch on all elements of our food system. I believe there are 4 basic elements: production, processing, distribution and aggregation, and market development. A transformed food system needs to be one that, through all 4 elements, sustainably grows and raises commodities and livestock with net zero greenhouse gas emissions, while also raising farm and rural incomes. One that builds greater resilience across the entire food supply chain, provides access to nutritious food for all, and guarantees equity of opportunity for all.
Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack today at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Some supermarkets are starting to push back on high food prices. Wall Street Journal reports that Kroger and some other chains asking brands to prove why higher prices are necessary before they accept them, and also warning manufacturers they'll stop carrying products if food companies will not negotiate prices. Historic first at a change of command ceremony at the U.S. Coast Guard headquarters in Washington, D.C. Admiral Linda Fagan becoming the first female commandant to lead a branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. She's been the Coast Guard's vice commandant for a year and was confirmed to the top post by the U.S. Senate last month. President Biden was at today's ceremony.
You've crewed the Polar Star and Heavy Icebreaker. You've captained the Port of New York. You've served on all 7 continents, and you've commanded the Coast Guard operation in the Pacific. You've served as Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard. Throughout her decades of service, she's demonstrated an exceptional skill, integrity, and commitment to our country. She upholds the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. This moment of acceleration of global challenges and hybrid threats don't stop at any border. There's no one more qualified to lead the proud women and men of the Coast Guard, and she will also be the first woman to serve as Commandant of the Coast Guard, the first woman to lead any branch of the United States Armed Forces. And it's about time. Secretary of Defense, when he sent me the name, I said, what in the hell took you so long? Really, congratulations. Look, with her trailblazing career, Admiral Fagan shows that young people entering the service, and we mean when we say there are no doors closed to women. And I might add, that includes her daughter, Coast Guard Lieutenant Eileen Fagan. Now, I've thoroughly embarrassed you, haven't I? You look like my son used to look, as Vice President Biden and his son, Major Biden. And you go, oh, Dad. Thank you. Thank you. It's not meant to embarrass, it's meant to compliment. Every little kid growing up today who dreams of serving their country will know that this is what an admiral and a service chief of the United States Armed Forces looks like. I mean it sincerely, it matters.
President Joe Biden at the change of command ceremony at the U.S. Coast Guard headquarters, and the new Commandant, Admiral Linda Fagan, when she spoke, thanking those who inspired her during her career.
I want to thank my parents for their courage. Their courage to allow me to begin this Coast Guard journey 41 years ago when I arrived at the Coast Guard Academy. I was 16. I announced my intent to attend the Academy, full of righteousness as only a 16-year-old can be. And like all good parents, they said, oh, she'll outgrow it. And I did not, although I did think I could go to the Academy and drive small boats. That's not true either. But I thank them for their courage of letting me begin this journey. If it weren't for that, I'm not sure that we'd be here. There are hundreds of you out there who I've served with over the years, far too many to call out, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your support, your commitment to the organization, commitment to me and helping me grow and learn. There is one person, though, and we've talked about the pioneers. I do want to call out one individual specifically. He's not with us, he's passed. I only met this individual once, but his courage had an outsized impact on me as a person. This is our 15th Commandant, Admiral Owen Seiler. He was an aviator. I met him at a building dedication in Savannah. Owen Seiler was the one who had the courage to integrate the service academies and make that decision to integrate the Coast Guard Academy back in the summer of 1975. In 76, the first women arrived. They graduate in 80, and I arrive a year later to the Coast Guard Academy. If it was not for Owen Seiler's courage, I do not believe I would be standing here today, and so I want to thank him. I'm wearing his shoulder boards that he wore as the 15th Commandant just to acknowledge the long blue line. To the Coast Guard workforce, today is about you. I'm honored and humbled to serve as your Commandant. I've always been inspired by the Coast Guard professionals serving in all our missions around the world. Thank you for your dedication, your hard work, and your service. It's my greatest privilege to work on your behalf.
New Coast Guard Commandant Admiral Linda Fagan today at the installment ceremony at the Coast Guard headquarters in Washington. A little bit more from the New York Times on this. They write that when she entered the academy, the Coast Guard no longer had policies that prevented women from serving in any particular role or capacity, unlike other branches of the military at the time. But its fleet needed to be retrofitted with sleeping accommodations and bathroom facilities for women. Once women had equal opportunities at sea, the main obstacle to reaching the Commandant's office was the number of years it took to gain enough experience for the job. When Admiral Fagan takes her seat among the joint staffs, she will have served roughly the same amount of time as any of those seated around her. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Get more of Washington's top stories sent to you every day by subscribing to C-SPAN's evening newsletter Word for Word. Sign up at c-span.org/connect. Have a good night.